The icy winds of Milwaukee howled against the thin glass of my silent apartment as I sat alone, staring at the cruel ultimatum glowing on my phone screen. My name is Piper, a 32-year-old data analyst who always believed that hard work and loyalty would eventually earn me a place of respect within my own family. However, the text from my mother shattered that illusion instantly. She told me not to come home for Christmas because my sister would lose her mind if she saw me there. I spent the entire evening in total isolation, listening to the distant echoes of neighborhood celebrations, until the clock struck exactly 11:55 p.m. Suddenly, my phone vibrated with a frantic call from the very person who had banned me. The background noise was a chaotic symphony of screaming voices, and the unmistakable, rhythmic wail of multiple police sirens echoing through the speakers. Before I could even utter a single word of greeting, my sister shrieked in a voice trembling with pure rage and terror. "What the hell did you do? Why are there two police cars here? Are you really trying to destroy this entire family just to get your revenge?" Before we dive into the shocking events that led to those sirens wailing in the driveway of my childhood home, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a single update of this unfolding drama. Your support helps me share these incredible stories of justice and personal boundary setting. So, feel free to drop a like and stay tuned until the very end to see how the truth finally came to light. The true fractures in my family began to manifest immediately following my father's funeral. The ashes of his cremation had barely settled before the greedy vultures, within my own bloodline, started showing their real faces. While I had spent the last 2 years of my life sacrificing my career and personal happiness to provide around the clock care for my father during his grueling battle with terminal illness, my sister, Cynthia, was nowhere to be found until the day of the memorial service. She arrived at the cemetery looking more like she was heading to a high-end fashion gala than a burial. Draped in expensive designer clothes, and seemingly more concerned with the lighting for her photos than the loss of the man who raised us. The moment the ceremony ended and the guests began to disperse, Cynthia didn't offer me a hug or a word of gratitude for the sacrifices I had made. Instead, she cornered me near the reception hall to aggressively inquire about the specific details of Dad's life insurance policies. The atmosphere grew even more suffocating when we returned to the family home in Milwaukee, where my mother, Brenda, cornered me in the kitchen with a thick stack of legal documents that she insisted I sign immediately. Mom explained, with a rehearsed level of desperation, that Cynthia was facing severe financial hardship due to some undisclosed, bad investments. Therefore, I needed to legally forfeit my entire share of the inheritance to ensure Cynthia could take full ownership of our childhood home. I stared at the papers in disbelief as Mom pleaded with me to be the bigger person, claiming that since I had a stable job as a data analyst, I didn't actually need the equity that Dad had intended to leave for both of his daughters. It was a staggering request that completely ignored the fact that I had used a significant portion of my own savings to pay for the medical equipment and private nursing that Dad required during his final months. My refusal to sign the document sparked tension that simmered throughout the house until I accidentally discovered the true extent of Cynthia's audacity. While I was looking for some of Dad's old tax records in his study, I noticed that the glass display case containing Dad's prized collection of vintage watches was completely empty. Upon further investigation, I found a receipt from a local high-end pawn shop hidden inside Cynthia's designer handbag, which was left carelessly on the hallway table. It became sickeningly clear that my sister had been systematically looting our father's most cherished possessions and selling them off for quick cash within the very first week of his passing. The sheer disrespect for Dad's memory and the blatant theft of items that were legally part of the estate made my blood boil with a cold, focused fury that I had never felt before. This discovery led to a scorching confrontation in the living room where the masks finally slipped, and the ugly truth of our family dynamic was laid bare for everyone to see. I stood my ground and firmly rejected Mom's irrational demand to sign over the house, while simultaneously pulling out the pawn shop receipt to expose Cynthia's cowardly theft of Dad's private collection. Instead of showing any remorse or shame, Cynthia simply rolled her eyes and claimed that she was entitled to the money because Dad had always promised to take care of her. While Mom surprisingly rushed to my sister's defense, I watched in horror as my own mother tried to justify the theft by saying that Cynthia was just trying to survive, while she accused me of being a bean counter who valued dusty old watches over the well-being of my only sister. The situation reached a breaking point when Mom, blinded by her toxic favoritism, stepped forward and delivered a stinging slap across my face that echoed through the quiet house. She proceeded to berate me with a barrage of insults, calling me a cold-blooded and ungrateful child who didn't understand the meaning of family sacrifice or unconditional love. As I stood there with my cheek burning from the impact, I looked past Mom to see Cynthia standing by the fireplace with a triumphant, wicked smirk playing on her lips, as if she had just won a grand prize. It was at that precise moment that the girl who had always tried to please her parents died, and a much harder, more calculated woman took her place. I realized then that my presence in that house was no longer about family or mourning. I gathered my car keys and walked toward the front door without saying another word to either of them. As I stepped out into the biting Milwaukee wind and the freezing sleet of a sudden winter storm, I felt a strange sense of clarity amidst the pain. I whispered a silent vow to myself that the boundaries between us were now officially forged in the fire of their betrayal, and I would no longer be the victim of their manipulation. The drive back to my apartment was long and lonely, but for the first time in years, I knew exactly what I had to do to protect the legacy that Dad had actually left for me. Approximately 1 month after the funeral, when the sharp sting of losing my father had begun to transition into a dull, constant ache, I started noticing several alarming irregularities within my personal tax filings. These red flags suggested that someone was leveraging my financial identity without my consent. I immediately reached out to my closest friend, Leo, who possesses extensive expertise in cybersecurity. I asked him to conduct a thorough investigation into any unauthorized access attempts regarding the family's online banking portals and my own private accounts to see if my suspicions were grounded in reality. Leo spent several hours scanning through encrypted logs, his expression growing increasingly grim as he navigated the web of digital footprints left by a very careless intruder. The results of the audit were devastating. Leo discovered that Cynthia had systematically used my social security number to open multiple high-interest payday loans and several new credit cards in my name. She had managed to rack up tens of thousands of dollars in debt across various platforms, likely to fund the extravagant lifestyle she displayed at the funeral. Leo turned his laptop screen toward me, his eyes filled with pity as he revealed the scale of the damage done to my financial reputation. "Piper, she is absolutely destroying your credit score with these massive outstanding debts. If we don't act now, you might never be able to secure a loan again," Leo said with a heavy sigh. I stared at the long list of fraudulent transactions, feeling a cold knot of resentment tighten in my chest. Cynthia is going to pay a very heavy price for being arrogant enough to believe she could steal the identity of her own sister and get away with it, I replied, my voice trembling with bitter determination. Leo nodded firmly while securing the data. "I will help you extract every single piece of digital evidence and forensic metadata we found today so that you can present an airtight case to the police," he affirmed. He then pointed to a specific transfer and added, "Look at this. She even accessed the accounts from your mother's home IP address last Tuesday." As we dug deeper, I collected bank statements that revealed an even more heartbreaking truth regarding our mother's complicity. I discovered that Mom had intentionally looked the other way while Cynthia drained the remaining funds from Dad's modest 401k retirement account, which was supposed to be the safety net for Mom's own future. It became evident that Brenda was so desperate to protect her favorite daughter that she was willing to sacrifice the resources my father had worked his entire life to save. I whispered to Leo, "My own mother watched her do this and said nothing." He replied, "Then they both made their choice, Piper." Armed with this evidence, I scheduled an urgent meeting with my attorney, Mr. Vance, to begin constructing a comprehensive legal strategy focused on federal financial fraud. Mr. Vance immediately recognized that the combination of forged signatures and digital theft constituted a serious felony under Wisconsin law. We spent the afternoon organizing police reports and affidavits necessary to initiate a formal investigation by the state's Financial Crimes Division. During this period, Cynthia had the audacity to call me using a tone of feigned concern to demand that I send more money to Mom because she claimed household expenses were becoming unmanageable. She spoke as if I were nothing more than an automated teller machine, lecturing me on my duties, while she was likely wearing clothes paid for by my credit. I maintained absolute silence regarding my investigation, giving her only short, non-committal answers to ensure she remained unaware of the legal avalanche about to bury her. I let her believe I was still the same pushover she had always manipulated, while Mr. Vance was finalizing the paperwork for the authorities. 2 weeks before Christmas, Cynthia initiated a horrific smear campaign designed to completely isolate me from the Milwaukee community and every relative we had left. Desperate to distract from her own financial crimes, she staged a fraudulent crime scene at my mother's house and called the police, claiming that I had broken in through the back window to physically assault her and steal her expensive jewelry. This was a calculated move to paint me as a violent criminal, creating a paper trail that she hoped would discredit anything I might say about her financial fraud in the future. Mom, blinded by her irrational devotion, actively participated in this elaborate lie by spending her days calling every aunt, uncle, and cousin in our family tree to recount my supposed crimes. She described me as an unstable monster who had turned against my own flesh and blood, leading to a wave of hateful messages and phone calls from relatives who had once claimed to love me. The social pressure was immense. I was suddenly treated like a pariah in the city I had lived in my entire life, with people I had known since childhood blocking my number and condemning me on social media, based solely on my mother's dramatic testimony. The vitriol reached a peak during a three-way call that Mom initiated, where she and Cynthia took turns hurling verbal abuse at me, while I sat silently recording every word for my legal defense. Mom screamed through the phone with a voice rasping with hatred, "You are a treacherous brat, Piper, and don't you ever dare show your face in this house again!" Cynthia quickly chimed in with a smug, threatening tone, saying, "You're going to rot in a jail cell for what you did to me, and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are." I didn't raise my voice or offer a defense. Instead, I responded with a chilling calmness that clearly unnerved them. "The truth will be revealed very soon, so please keep performing for as long as you can." The situation took a professional turn for the worse when Cynthia sent a packet of evidence, including the fake police report and photos of herself, inflicted bruises, to the Human Resources Department at the data firm where I worked. My manager, though sympathetic, informed me that the company had no choice but to place me on an immediate unpaid administrative leave, while they verified the integrity of these serious allegations regarding my character and conduct. It was a devastating blow to my livelihood, as they were effectively cutting off my income during the most expensive month of the year based on a work of fiction created by my own sister. Instead of succumbing to the panic they expected, I met with Mr. Vance and provided him with a comprehensive folder of ironclad alibi evidence, including timestamped security footage from my apartment complex and detailed GPS data from my vehicle. These records proved beyond any shadow of a doubt that I was miles away from Mom's house during the time of the alleged assault, making Cynthia's police report a clear-cut case of filing a false statement. I also handed over the recordings of their threatening phone calls, which Mr. Vance noted would be instrumental in dismantling their credibility when we finally went before a judge. To finish the counterattack, I officially filed a formal identity theft and federal fraud report with the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions, effectively activating the legal time bomb I had been building. I provided the investigators with the digital forensic files Leo had extracted, linking Cynthia's IP address directly to the fraudulent loan applications made in my name. As I walked out of the government building into the cold December air, I knew that while they were busy playing games with my reputation, I was playing for their freedom. The clock was ticking down to a climax they never saw coming. 3 days before the holiday, while the entire city of Milwaukee was buzzing with the excitement of gift shopping and festive decorations, I was quietly finalizing the last preparations for my own private war. I deliberately chose to distance myself from the toxic environment of my mother's home by booking a high-end, luxury short-term rental in a secure building downtown where neither Mom nor Cynthia could find me. This space became my command center, a sanctuary of glass and steel where I could spend my Christmas in peace. While the consequences of my sister's actions finally began to take shape in the shadows, I stocked the kitchen with my favorite foods and treated myself to expensive wine, deciding that if this was to be my first holiday alone, it would be celebrated on my own terms and in total comfort. Between the moments of personal peace, I spent hours on the phone with various financial institutions to officially freeze every single account associated with my identity that Cynthia had been covertly exploiting. I worked with fraud departments to flag her unauthorized access points and ensured that any further attempt to pull credit in my name would trigger an immediate security alert to local authorities. It was a tedious process of reclaiming my life piece by piece, but with every account I secured, I felt a weight lifting off my chest as I effectively cut off the oxygen to Cynthia's fraudulent lifestyle. When a bank representative asked if I wanted to leave a secondary contact for the accounts, I replied firmly, "No, I am the only person authorized to manage my life from this moment forward." My legal strategy was also reaching its fruition when Mr. Vance called my private line to confirm that the authorities were ready to move forward with the investigation. "Piper, all the formal documents have been filed with the district attorney, and the police are prepared to act at the exact time you requested," Mr. Vance confirmed with professional gravity. I took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of the moment, and asked, "Are you absolutely sure the evidence regarding the forged mortgage signatures and identity theft is convincing enough?" He didn't hesitate for a second before responding. "It is more than enough to put Cynthia behind bars immediately. The digital trail Leo provided is the final nail in her coffin." I closed my eyes and whispered, "Then there is no turning back for any of us." With the legal machinery in motion, I spent the afternoon carefully organizing the few precious mementos of Dad that I had managed to rescue before Mom turned against me. I polished his old military medals and tucked a few faded photographs into a velvet-lined box, preparing my mind for the reality that I would likely never speak to my mother or sister again. These objects were the only remaining links to a past that was rapidly disappearing, and I realized that by protecting these memories, I was also protecting the man Dad was before the greed of others tarnished his legacy. In a calculated move to ensure Cynthia stayed unsuspecting and overconfident, I sent one final, brief text message to Mom confirming that I would absolutely not be attending their Christmas Eve party. I kept the message short and devoid of emotion, simply stating that I had accepted their decision to exclude me and wished them a quiet evening. Mom didn't even reply. But I knew Cynthia would take my withdrawal as a total surrender, believing she had successfully bullied me into submission and won the house and the inheritance without a fight. Little did she know that her arrogance was the very thing that would make her upcoming fall so much more devastating. To complete my preparations, I compiled a comprehensive digital dossier containing the full extent of Cynthia's debts, her fraudulent loan applications, and the evidence of her identity theft. I set this file to be automatically distributed to all her creditors, and the local news tip lines the moment the police executed their arrest warrant the following night. I wanted to ensure that there was no narrative she could spin to play the victim once the truth came out, leaving her with no escape and no one to blame but herself. As I watched the snow begin to fall over the Milwaukee skyline, I felt a cold sense of justice settle in my heart, knowing that by this time tomorrow, the world they built on lies would finally crumble. On Christmas Eve, the old family house in Milwaukee was glowing with festive lights and echoing with the sounds of upbeat carols. Serving as the stage for the lavish party Cynthia had proudly organized using her stolen funds. The house was packed with relatives who had previously turned their backs on me, all gathered to admire Cynthia as she paraded around in an incredibly expensive designer gown, sipping fine champagne and boasting about her supposed financial success. She played the role of the generous benefactor to perfection, basking in the hollow adoration of guests who had no idea that the very appetizers they were eating had been charged to a credit card opened fraudulently in my name. Just as the party reached its peak and Cynthia was beginning a toast to her bright future, the front door was swung open by two uniformed Milwaukee police officers, followed by a team of plainclothes federal investigators. The music was abruptly cut, leaving the room in a deafening silence as the authorities marched through the crowd of stunned guests who clutched their drinks in disbelief. The festive atmosphere vanished instantly, replaced by the cold, sterile reality of a criminal investigation as the lead investigator stepped forward to confront my sister, right in the center of the decorated living room. The officer's voice was firm and carried across the silent house as he made the official announcement. Cynthia, you are under arrest for multiple counts of federal financial fraud and the felony theft of another person's identity. Cynthia's face drained of all color, and she began to shriek hysterically, pointing a trembling finger at the air as if I were standing there. There has to be a mistake! Piper is the one who should be arrested. She set me up because she's jealous. The room erupted in whispers as an aunt nearby gasped and cried out, "Good heavens, have we really been lied to this entire time? All of this was stolen." Without further discussion, the officers pulled Cynthia's arms behind her back and snapped the steel handcuffs onto her wrists, a sound that seemed to echo louder than any party music ever could. They led her through the front door and down the driveway where two patrol cars sat with their lights flashing red and blue against the white snow, illuminating the scene for all the neighbors who had come out onto their porches to watch. I saw through the remote security feed that Cynthia was sobbing and struggling, but the disdain in the eyes of the onlookers was unmistakable. The glamorous image she had spent months building was shattered in a single, humiliating moment of public disgrace. Exactly at 11:55 p.m., while I was sitting in the quiet of my downtown rental, my phone vibrated with the one permitted call Cynthia was allowed from the precinct. The moment I answered, her voice exploded through the speaker in a desperate, jagged scream of pure hatred. "What the hell did you do? Why are there two police cars here? You've ruined everything, Piper. You destroyed my life and Mom's house just to get your sick revenge." She sounded completely unhinged, her voice cracking as she realized that her web of lies had finally collapsed under the weight of the evidence I had provided. I listened to her rant for a few seconds, feeling neither joy nor sadness, only a profound sense of finality that had been a long time coming. I waited for her to catch her breath before I replied with a calm, steady voice that showed I was no longer affected by her outbursts. "I didn't destroy your life, Cynthia. You destroyed it yourself the second you decided to touch Dad's money and steal my identity to fund your delusions." Without waiting for her to respond or giving her the satisfaction of another word, I officially disconnected the call and blocked her number, finally ending the cycle of abuse and theft that had defined our relationship for far too long. The next morning, snow fell heavily across Milwaukee, bringing an eerie and profound silence after the legal storm that had swept through my family the night before. By the time the sun managed to peek through the gray clouds, news of Cynthia's dramatic arrest had already spread like wildfire through our social circles and neighborhood groups. The consequences were immediate and unforgiving because the bank, having been alerted to the massive mortgage fraud and the forged signatures Cynthia used to secure illegal loans, sent a formal notice to seal the property. Since the entire financial foundation of the house was built on a mountain of lies and identity theft, the legal protections Mom thought she had were completely nullified, leaving the family home in a state of immediate foreclosure. Mom spent the early hours of the morning flooding my phone with desperate, tear-filled voice messages, begging me to withdraw the charges or use my personal inheritance to bail Cynthia out of jail. She sounded like a shell of her former self, her voice cracking with a mixture of terror and a lingering delusional hope that I would once again play the role of the sacrificial lamb for my sister's mistakes. It was clear that even now, with the evidence laid bare by federal investigators, Mom was more concerned with Cynthia's freedom than she was with the fact that her eldest daughter had systematically stolen my life and Dad's legacy. When I finally answered one of her calls to provide final closure, the conversation was a devastating reflection of our broken family dynamic. Mom sobbed into the phone with a raw, agonizing desperation. "Piper, I am on my knees, begging you. Please tell the police there was a mistake. Cynthia cannot survive in prison." I didn't let her finish her plea, instead responding with a cold, unwavering firmness. "Mom, you need to open your eyes and look at the ruins of this family, because your toxic favoritism and your choice to ignore the truth are exactly what led us to this disaster." Mom let out a jagged breath and hissed through her tears. "You truly are a heartless child for doing this to your own flesh and blood." I simply looked out at the falling snow and replied, "No, Mom. I am just the only one left with the courage to tell the truth. To ensure that the smear campaign Cynthia had started could never hurt me again, I took the decisive step of posting the comprehensive dossier of her fraudulent activities directly into our extended family's group chat. I included the digital forensic logs, the forged documents with my stolen signature, and the official police reports that proved my innocence beyond any shadow of a doubt. I wanted to protect my reputation and put a permanent end to the malicious rumors that had been circulating among our relatives for weeks. Within minutes, the group chat fell silent as the people who had previously condemned me were forced to confront the undeniable evidence of Cynthia's betrayal and Mom's complicity. The reality of the foreclosure hit Mom with a brutal force just a few hours later when bank representatives arrived to officially serve the eviction papers. With no savings left because Cynthia had drained every penny, and no daughter to bail her out, Mom was forced to pack her belongings into a few small boxes under the watchful eyes of the authorities. She had to move into a tiny, state-subsidized apartment for low-income seniors on the other side of the city, leaving behind the house Dad had worked so hard to pay for. Watching her leave the childhood home in total isolation was a somber sight, but it was the direct result of her own choices to enable a criminal over an honest daughter. I realized that my role in this tragic drama was finally over, and I felt a strange sense of peace as I initiated the final steps of my total withdrawal. I officially changed my phone number, deleted my old social media profiles, and instructed Mr. Vance to handle any further legal inquiries so that no member of my family could ever reach me again. I blocked every possible avenue of contact from the aunts and cousins who had doubted me, choosing instead to step into the unknown with a clean slate. As I prepared to leave Milwaukee for a fresh start in a new city, I knew that the journey toward healing would be long. But for the first time in my life, I was finally free from the heavy chains of their expectations and deceit. A full year has passed since that fateful Christmas night, and today I stand in the heart of a completely different city, where nobody knows the shadows of my past, and no one can ever hurt me again. The skyline here represents a fresh start, far away from the toxic echoes of Milwaukee, and the crushing weight of a family that only valued me for what they could take. Moving away was not just a change of scenery, but a necessary act of self-preservation that allowed me to redefine who I am outside the narrow, suffocating roles my mother and sister had forced me into for decades. The news from my old life occasionally reaches me through my attorney, confirming that the wheels of justice have turned with absolute finality for those who betrayed me. Cynthia is currently serving the second year of her 3-year prison sentence for federal financial fraud and aggravated identity theft. Her once glamorous future is now reduced to the gray walls of a cell and a mountain of insurmountable debt that will follow her for the rest of her life. The designer clothes and the hollow arrogance are gone, replaced by the stark reality of her own criminal choices and the realization that there is no one left to bail her out or believe her lies. My mother now lives a starkly different life in a small, government-subsidized senior apartment, spending her days in a state of late and bitter regret as she faces the consequences of her blind favoritism. Without her golden child around to manipulate or me to provide a constant financial cushion, she is forced to confront the quiet loneliness of a life built on enabling the wrong person. She reached out through relatives a few months ago, but I chose not to respond because I realized that her sorrow was likely born from her own current discomfort rather than a genuine understanding of the pain she caused me. In the wake of their departure from my life, I have managed to rebuild my career with remarkable success, finally finding a sense of true inner peace that I never thought possible. My new colleagues value my expertise as a data analyst for my skills and integrity rather than seeing me as a convenient tool to be used, and my bank accounts are finally secure under my own watchful eye. I no longer wake up with a knot of anxiety in my stomach, wondering what new drama or debt my sister has created in my name, and that silence is the most valuable gift I have ever received. Choosing to go no contact and cut those ties completely was undeniably the most difficult decision I have ever made, but it was also the most honorable thing I could do for my own soul. It took me a long time to understand that being an adult with self-respect means walking away from anyone who views your kindness as a weakness to be exploited, even if they share your DNA. I have learned to protect my peace with the same ferocity that I used to protect my father's memory, and my life is finally my own to live without apology or fear. This story serves as a powerful reminder that family is not always a safe harbor, and you should never allow the bond of blood to become a justification for emotional erosion or legal violation. You must find the courage to establish firm boundaries and use the protection of the law when necessary to safeguard your future, because kindness without discernment will only make you a perpetual victim of someone else's narcissism. Your primary responsibility is to your own well-being and the truth, no matter how painful that truth might be to those around you. Thank you so much for listening to the entirety of my journey from betrayal to absolute freedom. I truly appreciate your presence here today and would love to hear your thoughts and perspectives on how I handled this difficult situation in the comments section below. Please consider subscribing to the channel to support my work and stay tuned for more stories of resilience and justice. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.